I don't share the opinion that it's a loss for America. I don't.
Did he say things in a sharp way? Absolutely, he said things in a sharp way. But disagreement isn't hate.
I think that he trafficked in hate.
But pointing out political violence on the left isn't disrespect, it's truth.
Hey, good day to you all. This is Lou Pimber here with Lou Pimber Speaks podcast. I've got a familiar face with me today. I got Jaime Abeitia. Did I pronounce it right again, brother?
You did.
Otherwise known as ThatVatoJaime, all the way from El Paso, Texas, originally from Arizona. And we have Miss Isabel Uzcategui, otherwise known as Who's Got the Key. So welcome.
Who's got the key? You got two people with difficult names for you, Lou. Sorry about that.
Well, welcome. Listen, I want to make sure that everyone knows my book, Breaking Badly, a Post-Traumatic Success Story, is doing great on the Amazons of the world. Thank you for those of you who have read it and written reviews. I greatly appreciate that. So I want to get to some points here. I want to chat a little bit. Man, so much is happening in the world today. Would you agree? So much is going on. It's just a never-ending cycle, and I like hearing from people who are close to the ground, boots to the ground type of folks today. And so we have Jaime. Here, I got a question for you. It'll just be question and answer, kind of shotgun style, if you will. Charlie Kirk, man, what a loss for America. What a loss for a bunch of people. People have different viewpoints on it. I'm going to ask you this question first, okay? Ready? Jaime. What did you like about Charlie Kirk?
What did I like about him? I liked that he was consistent on his gun policies.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Meaning that he quite literally passed at the intersection of policies that he advocated for. So, for a person who I believe was passionate about what he believed in, I feel like he went out on his shield.
Okay. And did you follow him? Did you check out his
It's
stuff?
impossible to not. It's impossible to not know his voice in the Brawligarchy Phil sphere. It's impossible.
What did you like best about what he had to say?
I didn't say I liked it. I
Oh,
said I liked that he was consistent with his policies.
okay, got it. What did you
I don't share the opinion that it's a loss for America. I don't.
You
I
don't
don't
feel it's a
subscribe
loss?
to that. No,
Okay.
I don't subscribe to that at all. No.
But we're all entitled to our opinion. That's what this is all about, right? So I
Mhm.
have that kind of conversation, which is fine with me. Isabel, who's got the key? Same question for you. What did you like about Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And something to me, actually, somebody who's followed Charlie Kirk for the last 10 years, I followed him. Even I knew of him when he started Turning Point USA, and I admired that the fact that he was 18 years old and going and starting this huge venture where, you know, other 18-year-olds might feel a little intimidated by that, especially after leaving high school, right? And he, auto taught himself everything that he knew and that he spoke about. And I respected Charlie Kirk because he was bold and unapologetic about his views. He didn't play the game of watering things down to please people. He said what he believed and he stood on a principle. That kind of consistency is super rare today. So also I want to kind of say something if I can with what Jamie said. I
Jaime.
don't know. Oh, I'm sorry, Jaime. So very sorry about that. But with what Jaime said, can I respond to what
Sure,
he
of
said
course.
about the policy that he stood by?
Yes.
So I just want to make it clear that supporting the Second Amendment isn't radical. It's about defending a constitutional right. And he didn't go out on his shield. He lived and spoke like someone who believed freedom is worth protecting, even when it wasn't all that popular with everybody. So I really respected him for standing on that ground and, yeah, standing by that policy. So, yeah, Jaime, thank you for saying that.
I mean, what is it that you say you don't like him? What is it that you disliked about him?
I think that he trafficked in hate. I think that there has been this incredibly ironic turn of events where people are now trying to re-engineer his past and who the man was. I think that he advocated for some policies, things like easily accessible firearms, open carry, and open carry on college campuses. Those are three policies that he stood for and that he pushed for. And I think that his death was unfortunately at the intersection of his advocacy for those policies. I also think that from what I know of him, I think he would resent the idea of people portraying him as a victim.
Okay.
A lot of conservative white men really try to cosplay up the whole I'm a man, I'm a bro, work with wood and I grow a beard, all that BS. I think he would really, really be upset about people portraying him as some kind of victim here. The reality is, these are policies that he advocated for. It's sad, and there's no place in this country for political violence, but it, you would be unwise to ignore the irony of the intersection of the policies he advocated for in his assassination.
Do you think do you feel like he had it coming? Do you think he kind of asked for it, or what is it you're
That's
thinking?
not what I said at all. No, and I know that the tendency is to like brand the liberal a particular way. I just finished saying there's no place for political violence here. I do think it's ironic that conservatives are holding this up while and saying, "Oh, well, he died, because of his beliefs in protecting the Second Amendment. He died because of the First Amendment." Where was that same sentiment from y'all on the right when legislators in Minnesota were assassinated just recently? And those were people that were assassinated for the policies that they pursued, the beliefs that they had, not at all unlike Charlie Kirk. But the idea that Charlie Kirk was a fighter for freedoms, I take issue with that. And I take the issue with that as a veteran. Because for all of this talk, for all of this machista crap that he would push forward, for all of this, he believed in freedom and America and American exceptionalism. Why didn't you raise your right hand? Why didn't you hump a ruck, stand a post, and defend this country like some of us who are liberals have? And so it turned my stomach when I watched him receive military honors that he absolutely did not earn and then get a ride on Air Force 2. That's something, and leave it to this administration. Honestly, leave it to this administration who has cheapened military service, who has ridiculed it, and who is headed by the son of a rich man who got his daddy to make up a fake medical condition to get out of serving. Leave it to him to order flags to be at half mast for someone who never served his country.
Isabel, I mean, you're from Arizona. There's a lot of divisiveness going on in Arizona right now as well. How do you feel about that?
Okay, well, if I were to respond to Jaime here, what I disliked was how the media and opponents constantly twisted his words from the minute that he passed, from the minute that he literally was shot. People already started to twist his words. And to make him, I don't know what the point was of that. To make a narrative, to make him sound hateful when he was really just a blunt citizen of the United States sharing his opinions and his views that ended up being very popular, and he ended up rising out of that popularity. Did he say things in a sharp way? Absolutely, he said things in a sharp way. But disagreement isn't hate. As for guns, he defended the Second Amendment because he believed law abiding citizens should never be punished for the actions of criminals. That's not hate, that's principle. And I hear you, Jaime, when you say that as a veteran, you take issue with some of his statements. But pointing out political violence on the left isn't disrespect, it's truth. Seniors, veterans, everyday people, nobody should be targeted for their politics. Charlie called it like you saw it, and sometimes that meant saying uncomfortable things. That's not hate. That's honesty. And if anything, he stood up for the people who felt ignored and silenced. And that's why so many respected him, even if they didn't always agree with them. So you may not have known what he stood for, but I do. And I can go ahead and interpret what he means and what he said if you're not too sure of what that is, or you want to start off this debate by starting to misinterpret his own sayings and his own quotes. I can
Well,
help you
thank you
with
for
that.
that. Thank you for that. I appreciate that as well. But
Yeah.
I happen to have a brain of my own, and I'm perfectly capable of interpreting the English language and the
Yeah.
things that he said. And I would say this: he didn't defend the Second Amendment. I did. He
Okay.
advocated for the Second Amendment, and that's an important distinction, because this idea that he defended, he didn't. He didn't defend it. Defend it. He advocated for it, which is admirable. I advocate for policies myself as well. So, but there is a distinction between defending and advocating for. So he advocated for some policies, very admirable. Definitely spoke to a group of people that felt unheard. That's always a good thing. But the idea that he wasn't about hate is just divorced from reality. This is a man who, when he was confronted with his position on capitalism by someone who was Asian American, he called him a racial slur. That happened. That's not love. That's hate. Here's a man who said that three very prominent black women were not qualified for their position, and the only reason that they got it was because they're black. That's not love. That's hate. And so for people to re-engineer someone who said that he was all about Christian values, no, he was for Republican values that reflect white Christian nationalism. He wasn't really true about classic Christianity, because if he did, well, then your side would be calling him a socialist, because classic Christianity is about, I am my brother's keeper. I should feed the hungry. I should clothe the naked. I should take in the immigrant. We live in a country where we deport immigrant veterans.
Jaime, let me ask you this, man. So you're saying what he said was hate speech?
That's not what I said. I don't know why you guys have this like
Can I
urge to
respond to what
turn
he
around.
said?
Well, let me respond to this first.
Okay, sure.
There is this urge to kind of paint what I'm saying in a different manner. I never said anything like that. Never implied anything like that. Again, there's absolutely no place for political violence in this country. So I
Okay,
don't think that what he said was hate speech. I do say he was racist.
okay.
Whoa.
But you're misconstruing what Republicans are about at the same time then with your own words, and sitting here getting upset about how we might be misinterpreting you. You're also misinterpreting us. So it's a little bit of a double standard that I'm going to call you on. And it's basically a lazy stereotype to say that Republican values aren't about white Christian nationalism. I from where I stand, I'm not a white person. I'm a Latina, and from what I understand, as far as being an independent that leans more conservatively, and what I've learned through the years by switching from a Democrat to being an independent that leans to the right, that I would say that they're about secure borders and strong families, free speech, and protecting constitutional rights, like what Charlie was doing. That was his mission, and he was trying to teach people about that. People of every race, faith, and background support those ideas. The left loves to slap scary labels on conservatives because it's easier than debating the actual policies. But reducing an entire movement to white Christian nationalism, it's just not true. And it's almost insulting to the millions of minorities who also vote Republican or consider themselves in any way conservative.
Well, I would say that the Republican Party has a long history of racism, and I'm not going to sit there and say that every Republican is racist, but I will say that every racist identifies as a Republican. And I will tell you that if all you have to do is the next time you're at a GOP convention, take a look around the room and see how many people look like you. And I will guarantee you, you will be in the very, very small minority. There is a reason for that. The Republican, you just said that Republicans stand for strong family values. Well, I would say I disagree with that. I would say Republicans are for separating families. I would say that Republicans are for economic policies that hurt families. I would say that Republicans have not done anything for working families. They have done everything they could to advocate for the breaking up of working families, including sentencing that for uneven sentencing for crimes. And all of those things are things that take fathers away from homes. And one of the things that he talked about, where I actually agreed with him, was the importance of a father in the home. You can't sit there and say that that's important, which I believe. And I will tell you, I'm a single dad of three daughters. Okay.
No.
who has been there for my children every step of the way. I 100% believe that there should be a strong male figure in the household. But I also recognize that there are many forces in this country and there are many policies that get in the way of that and that often separate families. And I'm not even starting with immigration. And so, unfortunately, most of those policies came from the GOP. That's not a mischaracterization. That's just a statement of fact.
For some people, a conservative is you call them they're racist, right? Did you say they were racist? Did you said every racist is a conservative or
More
No, that's not what
racist.
I said.
He said that more racists come from
Yeah,
the right.
I specifically said that I don't think all conservatives are racist. I said I think all racists are conservative.
Okay, well, um,
Can I ask a question? What
Sure, you want to know the difference?
to both of you, because it sounds like you said the same thing just backwards. Okay, let me just
Okay.
ask you this, just for clarification, clarifying question. Well, to you, Jaime, what is a conservative?
So first, let me just kind of clarify the question because clarify the position because you
Yeah,
you
go
felt
ahead.
like I was saying the same thing backwards. Okay. So I'll
Yeah.
say this. Look, if you take somebody from the KKK, oh wait, we don't have to we don't have to pretend it actually happened. Who has the KKK endorsed since the 30s?
the KKK who were Democrats.
They were so once we should understand history. And so if you look at history, when the KKK first started, the Democratic Party is now the Republican Party. They completely switched their platforms. That's a matter of historical fact. Take a moment and Google it if you'd like. That's a historical fact. But the reality is they have endorsed people like Donald Trump, not once, not twice, but three times. And so my point is I don't think every conservative out there is a racist. I have family members that are conservative, but I do think every racist identifies himself as a conservative.
Okay.
Okay.
You mentioned that the KKK have endorsed Donald Trump. Who was
They
that?
have David Duke, Grand Dragon of the KKK,
Wait.
three
Now,
times.
wasn't he a Democrat and then tried to
Uh,
run as a Republican once in Louisiana and then went back to being a Democrat?
No, no, he's been a Republican at one point in his life, like many Dixiecrats, another historical thing you all should look up. But back when they wanted to advocate for civil rights, a lot of the very conservative at the time called Democrats left the Democratic Party over civil rights. This is a matter of historical fact. This is why we should be investing more in public education because this should be common knowledge. But they
I
left the
agree.
Democratic Party, became what they called Dixiecrats, and then left. And their biggest leader, Strom Thurmond.
Okay. Can I respond to that, Luke?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So your history is a little different than mine. I understand that that's a common problem, considering all the things that are being rewritten in our education system. But I want to set my history, I guess, here, since you're setting yours. The KKK was born out of the Democratic Party. I am certain of that, not the Republicans, because for decades, Democrats defended slavery, Jim Crow, and segregation, while Republicans fought to abolish slavery and later push civil rights protections. Some
And
people
have
claim that,
opposed it since the Civil War.
yeah, some people claim that the party switched, like you just said, but that's a convenient rewrite of history for sure. A handful
It's
of
not. Just
Southern,
look at their policy. Just look at their
okay,
platforms.
well, I let you speak. So, a handful of Southern politicians changing sides doesn't erase the Republican legacy of fighting for equality under the law. And on families, like you said, if leftist policies that have torn them apart, basically, let's see, promoting the fact that you have minorities in a neighborhood and you're constantly feeding them this victimhood mentality and everything. And then they're constantly committing the crime because they're so upset and it leaves them fatherless. That's another thing we can get into for sure. But I think it's the leftist policies that have torn them apart. Generational like welfare, dependency, schools pushing ideologies instead of education. And let's talk about the cashless, soft on crime laws that got that poor innocent woman slashed on the light rail. That leaves neighborhoods completely unsafe and it destroys working families. Republicans believe in strong households and law and order and opportunity. Like meritocracy, we keep on hearing that word, merits, instead of the DEI program. So the left hides behind compassion, but I don't think their policies are anything that helps families from being broken. I'm sorry. And I actually am a social worker. So
That brings up an interesting point. Why are there so many? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys can correct that. But why are there so many Democrat-run municipalities and states? Why are they so crime-ridden? Why are they so soft on crime? Why do you think that is, Jaime?
I think it's because it is a very convenient talking point for the right to skew reality. The reality is, I live in the state of Texas. There is a higher crime rate in the state of Texas than there is in the state of California. Yet you guys all claim that California is this lawless, savage, post-nuclear apocalypse of a society when they actually have a better economy than the state that I live in, when they actually have a lower crime rate than the state that I live in. And I live in Ruby Red, Texas. It does not get more Republican than the state that I live in. And so if you want to look at some of these high crime metro areas, well, a lot of them are in Republican states. So which is it? Right? So Florida has a lot of crime. Texas has a lot of crime. Where you see a lot of poverty, where you see low performance of education, those all happen to be in red states. And I think that that poor level of education, which leads to terrible economic policies for working people, is partially due to the fact of poor education. An education system that actually tries to put forth the idea that Republicans have a history on fighting for civil rights when they have fought against it every step of the way since the Civil War. And oh, by the way, just recently tried to repeal the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act under the Republican Trump administration, and which point was run by the GOP in the House, the GOP in the Senate, the GOP in the White House, and the GOP on the Supreme Court. You cannot escape historical reality. And I live in a state where they have literally tried to rewrite history and tried to say that the Civil War wasn't about slavery. Now, you talk about completely rewriting history, and you know who the people are that are rewriting these books? It's the GOP.
That's a lot of stuff there, man. That's a lot of stuff, okay? But my question was really specific to why there's so many municipalities that are run by Democrat, left-leaning, soft. Are they so soft on crime? Why do you think that is?
I don't subscribe to the idea that they are, but if you want to talk about their crime rates, which the last time I was on here, somebody disparaged my hometown and said that El Paso wasn't one of the safest communities. We just had a survey come out, and yet again, we're one of the safest cities in America. And I live on a border city, so that on a border community, so that dispels that conservative myth. But I will tell you that you're going to have more crime when you have more people together. So when you have an urban area where you have more people together, there are that many opportunities for more crime to occur. That's just a matter of statistical analysis, right? But that is not, don't conflate causation with that, right? Those are two different um, conversations.
All right. So being in a red state doesn't change the fact that Democrat mayors and DAs control those cities. So, like, for example, the city leadership, they decide how to police, they decide how to prosecute, and whether to get repeat offenders back on the streets, right? Can we agree with that?
Sure, I live
Okay.
in a community where the last three mayors, even though it's a very Democratic city, El Paso is the most Democratic city in Texas, the
Okay.
last three mayors are Republicans.
So you can have a red governor, but if a blue city council pushes bail reform and a progressive DA refuses to press the charges, crime is going to rise. That's exactly what we've seen in places like St. Louis and New Orleans and Houston. The problem isn't that they're in a red state, it's the Democrat city policies that are failing in the local levels. But you
I
can't
think
blame the
that's
whole state.
Sure. And unfortunately, that's not the reality on the ground here in Ruby Red, Texas. In Ruby Red, Texas, what has happened is the Texas legislature has stripped powers from local municipalities because they don't like the fact that local municipalities have tried to reflect the will of their voters and tried to enact policy. So when local municipalities try to do things like set a minimum wage for their city and their community, Republican legislature took that away. When they tried to reform what the standard sentencing was for folks, and actually our local DA here in El Paso happens to be a friend of mine, and went and testified against this bill. The state took it away and took that power away from it. So when you have a governor who is 800 miles away from the community that we represent, then your party is no longer about local government and your party is no longer about small government. Your party is now everything you said that you guys didn't like, which was big government and intrusive government and a government that goes and attacks your freedoms. Nowhere else in the country has personal freedom been under attack like it has under the state of Texas, under a ruby red governor.
So let's move on to the most recently there was a you're aware of the ICE shooting, involving an ICE agent, yes? Are you aware of that,
Yeah.
Jaime?
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
so it was bound to happen, man. It was just bound to happen. Look, I spent many years in law enforcement, and you're running around chasing suspects, chasing felons, chasing criminals. It's going to happen, right? So, what do you know about that, Jaime? What have you found out? What are your thoughts on that?
I think my details of it are just about as common as everyone else's. It's an unfortunate event. I do think it's another example of what happens when you militarize a community and you have masked people chasing people down. You're going to end up with situations where people are very fearful, and sometimes fearful people, especially if they feel cornered, react in a particular way. I don't support it. I don't think it's right. Before you guys sit there and say, "Oh, the liberal is supporting people in ICE getting shot," no. But I do think that
I'm
there
gonna
are
say that.
policy ramifications that happen. And when you interject a very militarized community and you put them in masks, you are numbing them to occupying forces.
So
And
let
that
me
is
give
the
you a little
next
bit of
step in fascism.
So let me give you a little bit of that. Okay, so it wasn't a military operation. It was unmarked
No,
units.
but they dress in tactical gear.
Right,
I've
right,
never seen one of them show up like they're writing a traffic ticket.
right.
They
Well,
all come in super tactical gear,
yeah.
huge numbers to overwhelm. It's a common tactic. They come in with long rifles, assault weapons. Like that's the common. Let's
Right,
be
right.
honest about what
We
it
have
looks
to
like.
have we have to have come in superior numbers and superior force when taking
I'm not
operations.
saying it's not wrong. I'm just saying
Right.
that's the reality of the situation. You've got
But
masked people in tactical gear.
so should they not wear masks?
I don't think they should. No. Why would you need to?
Well, they've been doxing these guys. Is there something wrong with that?
You know who else docks people? Let's go ahead and bring this full circle.
But
Charlie Kirk, he doxed
how,
people.
how
That was a
so?
common tactic of his.
How so?
When you disagreed with him, he would dox you.
How
So why is it okay in that scenario? But now you're saying these folks get doxed, so they need to be masked. I mean, look, if you are enforcing the law, and if there is any safety concerns for them, shame on us as Americans that that's the situation. It shouldn't be that way. But I think that that's a convenient way of hiding it. You know who else wears masks? People who are ashamed of their political beliefs. Like the KKK.
Okay. But back to that shooting. It wasn't a military operation. There was no military there. It was just a couple guys in plain clothes do a vehicle takedown, and the guy takes off, traps the officer, the agent on the driver's side. He gets caught up in the vehicle and shoots and kills him. Was that a good shoot?
No, it's terrible. Shouldn't have happened.
But is it a lawful shoot in your opinion?
I don't know enough about the situation to have like seen it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But it isn't racist.
Not based on face value of what you said. No.
Okay. All right. But yeah, now you mentioned the agents wearing masks. Look, I wear a mask because I worked undercover for many years, and we go into a home. I wear a mask, balaclava, for a couple of reasons. SWAT wears masks for a couple of reasons. They're protecting from hot objects like fire and things like that. But what is the issue with these guys wearing masks? Like, people know they're cops. People know they're law enforcement.
No, I don't subscribe to that. Why would they know that? If they're masked, if they're wearing tactical gear that doesn't identify an agency, if and there has been plenty of videos surfaced online where people are like, "Give me your badge, show me your identification," and they refuse to do that, or when called upon it, then they disengage. Yeah, you have a community that feels like they're occupied. And it is one thing if you're undercover to be masked because you're continuing to try to maintain your cover. That's an entirely different situation than enforcing immigration policies.
Okay, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So, Jaime, calling ICE agents bullies for wearing gear is totally unfair, or even mentioning or making mention like they're bullies. I don't think that's really fair. Um, they don't show up in masks and armor because they want to scare neighborhoods. They do it because they're dealing with cartels, gangs, and violent offenders. The armor protects them during the raids, and the mask protects their families from being doxxed. Yep, from being doxxed or hunted down afterwards. That's not intimidation. That's called survival. And comparing that to Charlie Kirk is insulting because Charlie Kirk posting names online is like apples to oranges to this.
Well, I'm glad you
Kirk,
acknowledge he
I'm
doxed
sorry,
people.
I'm not done. Kirk wasn't raiding stash houses or arresting criminals. ICE is. These agents aren't hiding to play tough. They're protecting themselves from dangerous networks that would have no problem retaliating against them. The difference is night and day. How can you compare that to Charlie Kirk?
Simple. And I'm glad that you asked. So,
Yeah.
first of all, I'm glad that you acknowledged that he did dox people. So, thank you for that. I think I've met the first conservative that actually acknowledged a salient fact. So, I appreciate
Okay.
that. But the second thing is like, it is a mischaracterization to say that they're taking down cartel networks. They're raiding Home Depot. They're raiding cleaning ladies. That is the people that they're doing it. And I can tell you, Lou will probably tell you himself as someone who's been in law enforcement, intimidation is absolutely a factor. It is called overwhelming force. When I was in the military, we did the exact same thing when we were taking a village, when we were going into new areas. We absolutely made sure the M16 is louder than it needs to be. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's meant to intimidate, it's meant to scare. The M60, the Madus, all of those louder than they need to be. Why? The intimidation factor. So if you think that tactical gear isn't strategically meant to be intimidating, I hate to break it to you, that's 100% one of the reasons why you wear tactical gear.
Okay. Yeah.
Protection is
Yeah. I
definitely
get that.
part of it.
Okay, so let's be clear. Posting public information online is not the same as showing up armed to deal with violent offenders. ICE isn't patrolling Home Depot to flex on families. They're going after people with deportation orders, gang ties, and criminal records. They have actual pieces of federal court documents for these people. They're not just coming in there just to intimidate people with their big scary guns. Okay? And
Oh, that's not factually
it
accurate, but
isn't aimed at no, it isn't aimed at regular shoppers. It's meant to keep dangerous suspects from resisting. Overwhelming presence actually reduces violence and because criminals are less likely to fight back when they see that they're being outnumbered.
so
And
you
we've
agree
been
with me.
safer for it. We've been
So th
safer for it.
so then you're in agreement with me. Overwhelming force, I mean, that you're in agreement. It is meant to overwhelm, it is meant to intimidate. Thank you for agreeing with me. I appreciate that.
It's meant to intimidate the criminals. I think you're intentionally trying to twist my words. I'm not agreeing with you. There's a difference between intimidations and deterrence. I think you know that because you say that you're a military man. So you should know the difference between intimidation and deterrence, respectfully
Thank you
speaking. I
for a
appreciate you
civilian
for
telling me what I should know
yeah, yeah,
as a
but you
veteran.
should know. Then you should know what the difference between intimidation and deterrence is. ICE isn't out there to scare law-abiding people. Again, they're showing force. So criminals don't resist and nobody gets hurt. That's not the same as bullying. It's the opposite. It's how you keep dangerous situations under control. You would know that.
For someone who said
So,
that he didn't want me to twist their words, I never said the word bullying. I never used
but
that word. You made that word up.
okay.
I never used it.
Intimidating, but bullies intimidate, right? So you can use the word as a synonymous.
It is
So
100% meant to do
right.
that. And they are not going, and I didn't say they were going
Memory,
after
like I don't
shoppers,
have a
but they
memory
are
to
going after garden
extremely
workers.
remember
They
every
are
single
going
word you
after
say, but
housekeepers. They are going after people who take care of children, in addition to these other people. But
can you
he
name an
said,
example? Can you
I
name an example of what you're
plenty,
talking about?
plenty, 17
Okay.
veterans from El Paso that have been deported, I can also give you examples of every Wednesday when there's an immigration hearing here, where ICE will stand out there with their masks on, and what happens is their case is dismissed so that their legal status is taken away, and then they're taken in. These are people that are in a courthouse. They're not going anywhere. There is only one way in and one way out, and there they are in tactical gear to arrest them. So, and these are people that are not criminals. These are not people that are dangerous cartel members. So,
Mhm.
you want an example? I'll give you an example every Wednesday. 500 Overland here in El Paso.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. We had this discussion before, though. Yes, they may be a landscaper. They may be a worker someplace, but they're going after the ones who have felony charges, who have been either charged or are pending charges or have been convicted of charges, and they
Yeah.
just happen to be Alaska.
No. That's what they're saying that they're doing, but the reality on the ground is that people who have no pending charges, but they have an immigration hearing coming up, there's a blanket order to dismiss that so that they lose their status, their legal status, and then the minute that they lose their legal status, now they just catch and grab them. In fact, there have been people that have been dismissed because they're not keeping a quota.
But what legal status do they have when they have exhausted their legal status? If someone's
Because they
case is,
haven't always exhausted. They
well,
just
no,
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 that's
I
I'm just
need you
telling
to
you what
pull
facts
out
are.
an exact, I need you to pull out an exact situation in an exact case. Because
I
if
just
someone's,
gave you an exact
I
date
used to
and
work in the
address.
law. I used to work in the law field as a paralegal, and I used to work in and out of federal court. So if
Mhm.
someone's case is dismissed, they don't magically become legal. It just means that they've exhausted the system. Okay. And when they exhaust the system, it doesn't mean that they all of a sudden get legal status either. At that point, ICE is enforcing the law. Wearing masks, again, it doesn't change that reality. It just
Okay.
protects the agents again from the retaliation while they carry out those orders. These are extremely dangerous situations. And these men also have families. They have the right to protect themselves as well. They don't have the right to be fearful for doing their job.
So you wanted specifics. I'll give you. A
Yeah.
lot of these people are coming for our status hearings. So status hearings is not exhausting the end of your legal rights here in the United States. You have a protected citizenship status while you are continuing to navigate through that process. And these are status hearings at which they're revoking it. Not because they're criminals, but just because they have a quota that they have to reach.
Mhm.
17 veterans from El Paso have been deported. Veterans, people who have served this country, and they've been deported.
You
And
tell me
there's a
why
whole
they were
camp of
deported?
them in Juarez across the border because they got caught up in this, because they have their status hearing, they dismiss it, and they leave. There have been guys that have shown up in uniform and been deported. That is a fact. That is not an opinion.
So,
And I don't
Right.
know how anybody, particularly those on the right who love to cosplay that they're patriots and they love America, I don't know how any of y'all could support that.
Right.
let me
Well,
ask you.
status
One
hearings.
veteran is too
Okay.
many.
So again, status hearings. Okay. Don't give someone a permanent pass to stay when they
No
are
one said
already
that, but they haven't
exhausted.
exhausted their system.
Right.
They're
They're
right.
part of a legal process, status hearings, right? And when that
Mhm.
process ends with a removal order, ICE enforces it. That's not revoking rights. That's the law working the way it's written.
And that is
Protected
not what
status
is
can
happening.
be temporary. It doesn't mean immunity forever. If
Okay.
someone no longer qualifies, then ICE will step in. That's not abuse. That's carrying out the court's decision. And
I
I
I've already
don't, I
given
know that you're saying status hearing is this and that, but it still doesn't give someone a permanent pass to stay,
no, but it does not
depending on what
exhaust
they're,
it, which is what your point is you're making. You're making it sound like, oh, they've exhausted, so now they must go. No, a status hearing does not mean you have exhausted. It means you still have process steps that you can take to obtain your legal status. So that is antithetical to what you're trying to say. And I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over
so do
on the same
I.
thing because you feel like, well, this is what it is. And unfortunately, it's not.
So let me
Okay.
ask you
But
this.
I
Let me
Right.
thought
A
ask
we were talking
status
about
hearing
Charlie
is just
Kirk.
one step, but at
I thought
some
we were talking
point,
about Charlie Kirk.
right,
no,
but
it's all
at some
good.
point, the process has to be in something.
Yeah,
People can appeal, they can file motions, they can extend cases for
That's right.
years.
And
But
every last one of them should have every
when the
extent of
court
it.
finally issues a removal order, that's the end of the process. ICE
Yeah.
isn't skipping steps or cutting people off early. They act once the legal system is finished, right? So otherwise the law would never be enforced at all. So it still
But
means
that's not true.
that no, I
That's
think
why if it
I
weren't
think
give
we
you my
need
true,
to go.
example.
if
Let me
it
give you
weren't
my
true, there
example.
wouldn't be people that they bought back.
That's
Let
fine.
me give
That's
you
fine.
my
We can agree to
example. Okay.
disagree there for sure.
When this isn't the first time people have been picked up at their hearing and sent back. It's been going on. It happened quite a bit during the Obama era. Okay, it happened quite a bit. Matter of fact, he was a deporter in chief or something like that, right? Let me give
That
you
was
my
at the border. That wasn't during process. That was
okay.
at the
So let
border.
me at
And I was a critic of that.
okay. Let me look. I was when I joined the military, I wasn't a U.S. citizen. Okay, I had a resident alien card, but when I got that card at a young age, I was I was reminded of it that if I do something wrong, if my parents and if we don't file stuff in time in a timely fashion, that I was subject to being sent back. Okay, despite the fact that my mother was a U.S. citizen and my father was a naturalized U.S. citizen. Their fault for not moving faster and get me naturalized when it happened, whole other issue. However, I became a U.S. citizen. I went to the hearing in my Class A uniform. Nothing happened to me because all my ducks were in a row. Unfortunately, it does happen, but I think those
What year
guys,
was that?
it was 91, 92,
91. Okay. So
long
we're
time,
talking a very long time
a
ago.
long time ago.
Very
But the
different
laws are the
situation than we
same.
have now.
But the laws are the same. It's the
No,
same.
no, the laws are not the same. The laws have changed in those 30
Hang
years.
on, hang on.
They've become more draconian.
But the law, me violating the law, that didn't change, right? I knew that if I dropped the ball somewhere, I was subject
Sure.
to losing the privilege of being here.
Sure.
So,
But Lou, that system has changed and become much more rigorous over the last 30 years.
and
That
perhaps it
system
has.
has not made it easier for people to come into this country. That's it legally.
That's
That
definitely true.
system
My
has made
parents.
it more difficult for people to come in to this country legally. And to bring it back home, people like Charlie Kirk were against even legal immigration based on race. Yeah, oh, 100%. He said we have too many Indians in this country. Those were his words.
When did he say that?
Oh, I'll give you the exact quote. He says America does not need more visas for people from India. Enough already.
Okay.
We're full. Let's fully put our own people first. That's short.
Is there anything wrong with that though?
Is there anything wrong with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with it because first, if you're gonna have a legal immigration system, which Republicans purportedly say they're supporting of, then why the need to make a race-based comment like that of like, oh, America's full? We're not full when Trump wants to create a specialized visa, a gold card, right? We're not full then. We're not full when Trump's wife gets in on a genius grant because she's a supermodel.
Look,
We're not full then.
when you immigrate into places like Mexico, you need to show your worth. You need to
Well, that'd
show.
be great. If I lived in Mexico, I'd probably be fighting that, but I don't live in Mexico. I live in the United
My
States.
point is this. In the US, you have to show your
Mhm.
worth. And yes, maybe there are too many of one particular nationality. Doesn't make it racist. Maybe there are. So we need to make room for other nationalities to come into the United States lawfully, right? But I think that most definitely, if you're full, you're full. I mean, it's been a long time coming with an unsecured border, and at some point you have to say, "Yes, do, man. We're going to close the door, brother. You just got to wait." It's
We
like
have
getting into the club.
we have record housing. We have plenty of room for people. Where do you get the idea that we're full? But before you answer that question, I want to go back and challenge something you said. There is nothing in immigration law that says you have to prove your value.
You do. You have to. You have
No,
it for
no, you'd have to meet requirements. That's certainly true, but there's nothing that says you have to score so much or make so much money or contribute X, Y, and Z. There are visas that are available for folks that have unique skill sets or abilities
same
that
point.
this country is short of. That is
Correct.
true. But the
Correct.
idea that your average immigrant needs to do that, that's not
You
true.
have to prove your worth. You have to know who's coming in. What value do you bring into the family? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What value
Yeah,
do you
and
bring
you
to the
have to do
family?
that everywhere in
Yeah.
every single country of the world. Okay. Do you have to basically show what you can bring as a citizen there? They're not imagine if they just let anybody and everybody. You could be the next assassin. And okay, I don't subscribe to the globalist mentality at all.
There was a time when our country had exactly that policy.
So let me take it back to what we started
That was
here.
called Ellis Island, by the way. All you had to do was show up and not have tuberculosis. And congratulations, you're an American citizen. You didn't have to prove your value. You didn't have to do no background check. You didn't have to do any of that. And yet everyone talks about how great and how golden of an era that was for immigration. Why? Because it's predominantly European.
Hey,
But the
Jaime,
minute
what
that
year was
European
that?
that the immigrant communities start looking different than that, all of a sudden now, they're dirty mongrels who are criminals and they're eating the dogs. Whatever happened to that, by the way? Whatever happened to their eating the dogs and the cats?
I hope they took them away, if that's the case.
Yeah.
So what year was that? In my case, it was 1991. I had to have my ducks in a row. You know what I mean? So let's take it back to what we started here.
And
Okay,
now
what
immigrants are eating your ducks.
what's that?
And now immigrants are eating your ducks.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
Go
gotta
ahead.
say something. That is so exaggerated, Jaime. Nobody
You're
serious
right. It
thinks
was. It
immigrants.
was
No,
exaggerated.
but nobody serious thinks immigrants are running around eating cats and dogs. Okay, that's a scare tactic to
You might want to
distract
talk to the
from the
vice
real
president
issue.
about that because
Okay,
he absolutely said that.
right, but okay, You're
But you're
saying
right. I don't think
immigrants.
I'm
You're
serious
saying
being that.
immigrants. You didn't say that. Okay, so you have in that specific case, you had specific neighbors and community people walking around saying that they were seeing Haitians do these things. That's on them. Okay. So you're going to call them liars, and JD and Trump were just reporting on what these citizens were saying. Okay. That's all they were doing was reporting. Okay. So nobody else is saying that all immigrants, this is a widespread blanket fear that you said because you didn't necessarily pinpoint to that specific thing,
I was
right?
unaware that the vice
Um,
president was a journalist.
look, okay, he can speak to the public. That's a asinine comment. I'm sorry, but and you're using a common scare tactic to distract from the real issue. And the real problem is basically that millions of people were let in to cross the border the last 4 years illegally, overwhelming our schools, our hospitals, and our law enforcement with crime and crime and crime that they didn't have to necessarily, respond to, but they had to because now they're overwhelmed with all of these people here that are undocumented committing crimes. Now, I'm not saying that the local lady at the grocery store is committing a crime that's violent, but a lot of them were committing crimes, in fact, that were violent, murdering and raping our United States citizens. Okay, so talking about the incident, about JD talking about the cats and the dogs and President Trump, this or that, that's a deflection. And it's not really, you know, it's not really serious to debate about that. It's dodging, law
Okay.
and order that needs to be in this
I
country.
actually
We
have an
need
So
more
example.
law and
I
order.
got an example. I was in Las Vegas not too long ago. True story, bro. I'm walking down and I see this dude. I'm gonna profile him, socially profile him is probably Haitian, okay? Some people told me that this guy does it all the time. I'm watching the guy with a pigeon. He's pulling the feathers out of the thing like you would a chicken, and he's walking in the back. And I was like, I hope he's not eating that thing, right? Who knows, bro? Different strokes for different folks, okay?
So I would say that especially Isabel's comments just now, kind of really underscore the importance of bringing this back full circle to dialogue and political violence in this country. So I don't know if you're okay, Isabel, but I do want to say this. I have refrained from name calling to you. I haven't done that one single time in this conversation. You have now done it 4 different times. And I don't know if it's you're unsecure about your position or you feel like you're not getting enough time on the mic, but you've done it 4 times. I haven't done that. I don't plan on returning the favor. But that is part of the problem in this country when it comes to political discourse, is that you can't disagree without starting name calling. But going back to that actual issue, regarding JD Vance, those are the reality is that the president and the vice president have a certain level of a bully pulpit. Now I'm using the word bully, a certain level of a bully pulpit in which they can amplify a message. And that message was strategically amplified. It wasn't, oh, oops, I made a mistake and repeated something that turned out to be entirely untrue. No, it was something that they repeated over and over strategically to create fear, to stoke that fear amongst immigrant communities. That's just the reality of what happened. And it turned out that all of that ended up being one big hoax. It never even happened. But that's how people get dehumanized and villainized.
I
Okay,
think it is.
so I wasn't even aware that I was insulting you. So if I had
You
insulted
said
you,
that's an asinine statement.
yeah, that's an asinine
Yeah.
statement. I am talking about the actual statement, not you per se. So I didn't call you an asinine person. I said that that was an asinine statement. So I labeled the subject, not you.
Okay.
So I just want to clarify that. And I don't know
Sure.
how I did that 4 different times. But let me just clarify. Okay. I'm not here to insult you, Jaime. I'm here to debate ideas like Charlie Kirk did. If you feel challenged by those ideas,
I
that's
don't.
because okay, well, but if you do, it's because I'm pressing on the weak points of your argument, not attacking you personally. The truth is, political violence, it's fueled when one side silences or demonizes the other instead of having honest debates.
Like calling
I,
it
and
asinine.
and I'm keeping it's an asinine statement.
Okay.
Okay, it's a statement that I am well in my right to say that I don't like something and I just decided to use the word asinine. Okay. So I'm keeping this about policies, results, and reality, not about you and you personally. Okay. So if I call out something that you say that way, it doesn't mean I'm saying it to you as a person, Jaime. I don't even know who you are outside of this
Well,
conversation.
thank you for
So
mansplaining.
so let's stick to that so we can actually have a real conversation.
So,
Okay.
so I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So let me ask you this. Um, what lessons can we learn, Jaime, what lessons can you learn, Isabel as well? What lessons can you learn from the messages, the legacy that Charlie Kirk is leaving? Like, what number one, what is his legacy, and what lessons can we learn from that?
Do you want me to go first
Go
or
ahead.
would you like Jaime to go
Yeah, go ahead.
first?
Go ahead.
Me. Okay.
Yeah.
So like I started off at the beginning of what we were talking about with this, and um I think that he just basically wanted people to have conversations. He doesn't want conversations to stop. He doesn't matter if you agree with somebody or you disagree with them. The point is that you're talking to each other and doing it by sharing positions that are based in full rounded thought and not just emotional whims based on how you might feel about a certain situation based on limited information, right? We all experience things very differently. That's why he was talking about empathy, not liking that word, because in reality, empathy is something that somebody it's crafted as a way to say, I know how you feel. But Charlie Kirk said that he feels that people can't understand how somebody feels because they're not themselves. So he liked the word compassion better because then he can have the compassion for what somebody's going through, not empathy and say, I feel what you feel. So I think that if anything, I can take up and move forward with in Charlie's life, move forward with him in his movement is just to continue to have this conversation and not be afraid of political violence over it because you trigger this one or that one for whatever reason. And that's it. And I think that he would have still fought for the freedom of people to make fun of him in his death and everything else because that's how they choose to express how they're feeling right now, as much as it's despicable to the ones that are left holding onto his legacy.
Jaime, what do you think? What lessons can we learn? Have we learned? And what do you suppose his legacy is as we wrap up?
Well, again, it is very clear there is no place for political violence in this country. I think the lesson that I've learned from this is that I think people unfortunately still pick and choose when they believe that. And I think that when it happened to Democratic lawmakers who were standing up for their beliefs and their policies, you did not see the president award them military honors that they weren't worthy of. You did not see him order flags at half staff. I do believe that his legacy will be one of reaching a group of people that did not feel heard. And I think that that's always a good thing when there is an outlet for people that aren't feeling heard. Um, I do think that this is a good opportunity for people to give more than lip service to actual mental health, and to actually look at it. I do see that there was a rush from people on the right to blame the left for this assassination. Uh, and it just kind of defies logic that they blame the very people that they call, blue-haired, effeminate snowflakes as being the people that committed political violence, when it's just as likely as this individual was, a radicalized member of the Groiper Army. We don't know what his intentions were yet, um, but he was taken alive. So there's an opportunity to find out whether or not that's actually true and find out what happened. I think that this idea that he was that the conservatives on the right are pushing forward is like he went to college and he was radicalized. He lived in one of the most conservative states. There's no radical institutions in the state of Utah. It is as close as you can get to a church state as you can get in the United States legally.
It was
So
online, possibly online.
sure. Also possible it was the Groypers, right? Isn't that equally possible? Isn't that equally possible that extremist right views that were opposed to Charlie Kirk? Because I'm sure Isabel knows about those folks. There was a whole group of folks that on the right that were very opposed to him that felt like he was taking up space that they should have had. So it's as equally as possible it was them. But you didn't hear folks on the right even look in that direction. Their first instinct was, oh, it's the blue-haired barista that we spent all this time making fun of their gender identification, and they're a snowflake, and now all of a sudden they're capable of a military shot 200 yards away across windage.
Hey, we'll find out. We'll find out. Okay.
Yeah, the investigation is ongoing, so we don't know and we can't say
Yeah.
prematurely what it was, what it wasn't, or anything like that.
Well
But
said, Isabel.
yeah,
What?
so
Well
for
said.
right now, the shooter, what we do know, okay, the things that we do know, and we should stick to that. Whether we want to label them is up to us, whatever. But the shooter literally carved anti-fascist slogans into bullets and quoted Bella Ciao, which is a song tied to socialist and leftist movements for your listeners who might not know that particular. So even Utah's own governor said he was clearly influenced by the leftist ideology. His parents went on to say that he had become radicalized from their family's values, and they were very concerned. This is exactly why they ended up turning him into the police themselves, because of these radicalizations of his son.
He
This is
also
a
included a
very
gay
difficult thing,
slur.
by the way, for parents to do, by the
Yeah,
way. It's
yeah.
extremely difficult. So I
Since
don't
we are
know.
talking about facts, he did include a gay slur as part of, the things he put on those cartridges.
Okay, well, to spin that into he was on the right is pure deflection. If he
It's
had
no
used,
different than you
yeah, well,
doing what you're doing.
So
yeah,
let's wrap this bad boy up. All right. Last question. Yes or no? Jaime, was Charlie a good guy?
Oh, I don't know his personal life to say whether or not he's a good person.
You good man.
From what I have seen, he seemed to love his wife and his children. He
very
seems to
much.
have a faith. Um, but I don't know how closely he kept to his faith. I don't know what happened between his spouse and his kids. I don't know any of that. None of us do. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. Do I have a reason to think that he was a bad human being? I don't. I don't. I mean, is
Fair
the
enough.
intent here to sit there and say I think he's an asshole? No, I don't think he's an asshole. I don't think he should have died for what he believed. I disagree with what he believed, but I don't think he's an asshole for it, and I don't think he's a bad human being for it. It's unfortunate. I said that from the beginning. I said it in the middle. I'll say it at the end. There's no place for political violence in this country.
So what do we do moving forward to help people get along? What can we do? Briefly.
I think if you had the answer to that, you should write a book and sell it and charge people to read it.
Come
Isabel?
on, give a better answer than that. Like really, really think about it.
Why
Think
don't you
about a
give a better
solution.
answer than that,
Well,
and
no,
then
no,
I'll
no.
reply to yours?
I really would genuinely, Jaime, I would really genuinely like to hear what you would propose to make things better. Because I think moving forward, I think for Charlie, I think he would have liked us to have discussions on how we do tone the temperature down in politics. And I think that he would have wanted us to address this on your side and on my side. So maybe, hey, maybe we can find a common ground.
And you know what?
So, well, no, answer the question. I would really love an answer to that. And then I will give my answer respectfully.
Here's what I think.
Oh,
I
uh,
think
okay.
I think Charlie was doing it, man. He was giving people a shot to ask a question, and he asked them to prove him wrong. And I
Yeah,
saw people from different lifestyles, and he accepted them all. He just there were certain values he stood on, but he gave everybody a shot to have civil discourse. I think that's what we need more of. The
yeah.
problem is people get into their feelings and get angry are quick, have a short fuse, and they get upset.
Mm.
We just need to be mature and have good conversations, just like we are right now, air it out and let the chips fall where they may, and be in agreement that we are an exceptional country full of exceptional people. We're imperfect.
Absolutely.
I think we all just need to do our best, be impeccable with our word, not make assumptions, and just do our very, very best, you know?
So she asked me to answer that question,
Go
and
for it.
your answer inspired me.
No,
I think that
absolutely.
we need to, well, no, actually, I'm going to answer it.
No, sure,
So
absolutely.
I do think that it is important that I think part of the problem of the division is actually platforms like this, social media. I think that anytime you put space between yourself and someone else, it gives you a freedom to say things you wouldn't otherwise say. And I grew up in a family where there was a lot of Republicans. I know that some of the most fruitful conversations I've had were in the barbershop. We're in the local bar. We're in a local restaurant or at my Knights of Columbus hall. Um, those I think are some of the most fruitful conversations I've had because people had an opportunity to be in person and have a dialogue that's more respectful because you're in person and you have to be able to deal with, and maybe it's because I grew up in the streets in a different time, but you have to be able to be held accountable to your First Amendment right. So you have the right to say whatever you want. You also have the right to somebody kicking your ass if they don't like what they have to say. And I think that to a degree, and I'm not encouraging violence, but what I'm saying is I think that we have lost something in the easily acquired distance of social media and the theatrics of programs like this, where it lends itself more to the extremist views than rather a couple of people having a beer or a couple of people in the barbershop talking about how they think about an issue. And I think eventually at its core, all politics is local. And I think that how things affect and impact your local community, your neighbors, your friends, and your family ultimately are where things happen. And unfortunately, I think the way to get better than that is to do less of that dialogue online and do more of it in person.
Agreed. Isabel, last.
So maybe the way moving forward um, is carving out a policy we can all agree on. I know that that's really difficult, but if we can all come together in common ground, like I said, and maybe think of a policy that secures the border so our communities are safe, whether that starts with really talking about the immigration reform that I think maybe I don't maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but maybe Jaime would agree that we absolutely need immigration reform. um, but um, you know it's very difficult as it is right now. It needs to be clearer and faster so people who want to contribute can do it the right way, right? Both sides should also be able to agree on safety and opportunity, right? If we focus on that middle ground instead of just pointing fingers, we could actually fix something instead of fighting forever and ever and ever. So I think that we just need to have more discussions like this. Actually, social platforms that do exactly what we're doing right now is amazing because we're able to talk it out. Um, and doesn't matter if we like each other at the end of the day. I don't think this is about liking each other. I think this is about liking what the overall good for the community will be. And we can't check mark all the boxes because there's going to be some that agree, some that disagree. But I think if we take a poll and we find that the majority, like the democratic process is supposed to be without the emotion, I think that we can find something that works. Maybe that's even dismantling the party system completely and maybe just making the independent voices louder and not calling ourselves the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or the left or the right, and coming together in some party that rewrites things to shape a party that just cares about America.
There you go. So I go back to being impeccable with our word, right? Doing our very best, not making assumptions, and let's raise good kids. You guys have young kids. Let's raise good kids. Let's be in our kids' business, give them good values to respect others. And lastly, I think is what we should do. It's a very simple policy. You ready? The golden rule. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. Jaime. Let's go watch the fight, bro. Okay. Next time I'm in Paso, I'm gonna call you. We'll have that beer, okay, my friend. Next
All
time I'm
right.
in
I was born in
Arizona.
El Paso. I was actually born in El Paso, so that's
Great.
awesome.
Awesome. There you go. We got some common ground. Hey, this is Lou Pimber. Thank you for being here. If you like today's conversation, share it, like it, subscribe, follow Isabel, who's got the key, right?
Who's got the
And
key?
who's got the key. And we have Jaime Abelleta that Vato Jaime in El Paso, Texas. Thank you all. God bless you. Talk to you all very soon.
Bye.
Adiós.